Welcome everybody to another episode of Op Watch. This week, CF Montreal hosting New York Red Bulls at Stade Saputo, their second to last home game of the season. With me to break down the opposition is former Bet US TV MLS expert and current member of the Designated Pundits, Bob Ventimiglia. Bob, thank you so much for stopping by. How you doing?
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's a beautiful fall day here. Looking forward to some good soccer this weekend. I like that they brought the matinees back. I think there's like a 2 o'clock game, a 12 o'clock game. I'm loving that. So, just excited to be here, talk some soccer.
Exactly. Now, the Red Bulls have had much better. I mean, again, the bar is quite low, but the much better season than Montreal's had going into the season, right? What were the expectations and how much were you looking to kind of build on last year's playoffs performance?
So we were expecting that, and none of that has come true so far. Red Bulls this season are doing a lot of what we expected them to do, which is be a higher talent level team. I think that's where, if you compare these rosters, like you guys cannot touch some of the top players that we have on the roster, specifically looking at like Emil Forsberg or Eric Choupo-Moting. But we went over a little bit away from the game plan. Red Bull was a mediocre team, just a little bit above 500 last season, making the playoffs. And then they caught hot fire, kind of changed to a 5-man back line, which they'd never done before, and really shut down opponents, kept a couple of, really great defensive performances, especially I'm thinking of like Orlando off the top of my head, in order to get to MLS Cup. However, about 3 or 4 weeks into the season, they abandoned that completely, went back to a 4-man back line and have struggled just about ever since. This is one of the best teams in the league at home, and I believe we're second or third to worst on the road, only 0.47 points per game on the road. Really, really bad. So while the team itself has done really well, they haven't lived up to expectations in a few different ways. First of all, not putting together another playoff caliber season. Right now we're on the outside looking in, but also going away from the strategies that took us there. The 5-man back line, a higher energy pressing team, doesn't seem to be fitting that play style much right now.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it doesn't really matter how you start the season or play out the season. It really matters how you end it. And, based on the way that they ended the season, I had Red Bulls as kind of my dark horse, and they kept on backing it up because, they took everybody down in a super competitive Eastern Conference. So what do you think the likelihood is of that repeating?
Making the playoffs, I think it's about a 30% chance Red Bull find their way into the playoffs.
I just mean specifically ending the season with the level that you guys were playing at, because again, you guys were world beaters at the end of the season to kind of make the playoffs and then have that run. What's the likelihood of that happening again?
Sure. I don't think it's very likely. We do have a little bit of a tough schedule. Now, CF Montreal, that's kind of the easiest game we have for most of the season. But then we host NYCFC, we host FC Cincinnati, and play in Columbus. Like maybe Columbus can take the day off. Maybe they're so decided by that point that we can get something going. The 2 home games look good, but 0.47 points per game on the road, playing Columbus Crew on decision day in Columbus, not looking great. I think that, we had a little run mid-season with some good form. It has been kind of downhill since, but that's also what happened last year. Like, we didn't finish in good form last year. We barely snuck into the playoffs after losing the entire month of September and in a lot of August. Backed our way in and then caught hot fire. In order to catch hot fire this season, we would need to make the playoffs. I just think that's kind of unlikely at this point. We're hopeful. We're still going to watch. We're still going to cheer. They still have to play the matches in front of them, and a lot of weird stuff can happen in MLS. So, it's happened before, but I think that we're not really Red Bulls fans aren't jaded. Well, let's put it that way. It's been a long time without a cup, and it looks like it's going to be another at least one season.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, the worst, not the second worst or third worst, the worst road team in MLS just walked into Saputo Stadium and left with a 2-0 win. So, if there's any cause for optimism, there's a saying in Montreal, there's never a bad time to play at Stade Saputo, because, sometimes Montreal just hands out wins to teams that maybe are a bit down on the luck. So, we'll see if New York Red Bulls are one of those teams. Let's take a very brief look at the reverse leg, right? 1-0 win. What were some of your takeaways from that game, and how much of a difference should we expect from a New York Red Bull side that we haven't seen again, frankly, in what is it now, 4 months?
Yeah, so I mean, thinking back, that was a long time ago. April 26th. That was my
Yeah.
birthday weekend. 1-0 win, okay, but that had to have felt really disappointing at the time. I think it was a Noah Ayla goal. You
Mhm.
know, I can't really think too much back to that. That might have been one of the first games we kind of played it back into a four-man back line there. And I know that all four of our attackers were subbed off before the end of the game. I was like, hey guys, let's ride this out. I think we'd be disappointed to see another performance quite like that, because when you're on the road, you got to take it to your opponent. And it's kind of like a little backwards, right? Normally you want to win at home, come out aggressive and really put up a whole bunch of points. But at this point in Red Bull season, they are going to want to come out and score early and score often. I think you're going to see a much more aggressive team than you saw that time around. And, maybe just a little more of a competitive match. We can talk about that Noah Ayla goal and about, what I expect to happen when we preview the actual game segment. But as far as, I like had to pull the tab up to look at what happened in that match. That's how long ago. It feels like seasons ago, doesn't it?
Look, honestly, June feels like years ago, let alone April. So I get that, especially when you've got a season that is going the way it does, and it just feels like you've got like 5 seasons crammed into a couple months.
Sure.
It's not the best kind of feeling, but I get that. I think it'll be really interesting just to see how much, if the lineup that was used again, like a 4-2-3-1, like you said, all four forwards were subbed out, how much that starting lineup is going to change, if it's going to change, and who was on the bench that maybe has kind of risen up in team's hierarchy, and you think that could be one of those starters.
We've been pretty consistent as to the starting lineup for a few weeks now, and it's just kind of what happens when you have players that are injured. I don't necessarily agree with the coach's choices on all of the players, but I would expect Noah Ayla to get back out there. I think that Eric Choupo-Moting can have a really big game. When I kind of break down what you guys have been doing, I think that the way to win and the way to really secure a win here is in the air. I think that that's where we have you be, dead to rights in every aspect of the game. So I would expect maybe, our tallest players to be on the field, Eric Choupo-Moting, Noah Ayla, either Tim Parker. I just think that that's the way we're going to have to, skin this cat on that one. And it's just going to be a bunch of big guys. It's going to be 6 foot and taller in every position that they can. We've had some young attackers, Sofo, Julian Hall. I think Carmona might take a seat in this one. He's a, kind of a quick, short little utility attacker. I don't think that he's going to be welcome on the pitch for much of this game. I think they're going to go with, the big guys. And as far as that goes, the kind of names we've already know, Edelman, Tim Parker, Ayla, Nalis. We're going to go, I think, with one of those groups.
Yeah, set pieces have been ever since George Campbell left. Honestly, set pieces have been a bit of a sticky point. The worst team in the league set pieces last year, and they made some corrections and it looked better. And George Campbell left, and it feels like he was kind of the linchpin in organizing that kind of defense. So without him, they've become a lot more vulnerable. They don't necessarily concede as much as they did last year, but chances all the time.
Yeah,
there was
we
a lot
have.
of eyes. Yeah.
I would love to see a 3-man back line again for this, just because we have the center backs. Got Alexander Hack, 6'4". We didn't talk about Victor Bogac. That's a player who I would like to see subbed in. Currently questionable in this match, but he's one of the young players, also 6'4". Noah Ayla, 6'5". Sean Nalis, 6'4". Eric Choupo-Moting. There's a good chance that we can throw out 7 players that are 3 inches taller than I am. So, I think that's the way we're going to go. And, I don't want to get too tactical on you because I know that segment's coming up real soon, but I think that is those are the substitutions that we're going to need to make in this one.
Interesting. One combination I think everyone had their eyes on and has bore fruit really is the combination of Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting and Emil Forsberg. They both got double digits goals this year. How has that partnership flourished, and where do you think the ceiling is for that specific dynamic?
I think it's quite a high ceiling. I mean, they're two incredibly skilled players, and it's easy to overlook Emil Forsberg. He has 17 goal contributions this season, 10 goals, 7 assists, and it could be much, much higher than that. With Moting, he has 15 goals, 2 assists. These are two guys, 17 goal contributors each, that play very different styles. Choupo-Moting, we heard, he's going to be slow. He's never played this much before. How are his legs going to hold up? They held up pretty well, and while he's certainly not blazing down the field, he can beat a bunch of guys, in a short sprint. So he does have some quickness and some speed that maybe, we're not expecting a 36-year-old man to have. A lot of that is due to his size. And Emil Forsberg, look, long shots. You can't let him get in front of the net. Left foot, right foot from outside the penalty area, absolutely clinical. They've linked up really well for two older players in Major League Soccer. And, I really think the sky's the limit. These could be two 20-goal guys, because you look at Emil Forsberg, he's played and scored in a World Cup. He's played and scored in Champions League. He's played and scored in just about every competition you can play and score in. And I think because we tend to favor, these young South Central American number 10s as, like the prototype you want. He's not Lucho Acosta. He's not Evander. But in his prime, I would put him up against any player in Major League Soccer. Maybe Absolutely. There's a guy on Inter Miami that I wouldn't put him up against. But, absolutely stellar. And I think that, maybe in a different market, in a different place, you would really hear his name a little more often than you do. It's very easy in the New York sports market to go a little bit under the radar with all the other sports that we have here, 2 hockey teams, 3 football teams. And I just really couldn't speak enough about him. He's a fantastic player. He's a player other players want to play with. Back when we were trying to get other players from Bundesliga over the summer, we were looking at some strikers, Timo Werner, guys like that. They were calling him up, hey, how's this going for you? So I think having a player like that who's been a player, a leader, and a goal scorer in every competition has been absolutely lights out. And as far as ECM, I already said, he's a little younger than people expect, I think. He is 36, but he's never really been like an every game starter his whole career. He's been a very important part. He's been a depth piece, but I think I compare him to like running backs. I don't know if you guys are into American football. I know you guys have the Canadian
we got
or,
Canadian football,
or whatever.
We're still
but for a long time, they were looking at running backs by age. Age doesn't matter. It's how many hits they take. It's how many times they're on the field, running the ball. It's actually the number of rushes that determine injury and stuff like that. And ECM is a little bit fresh, I'm very surprised, usually, especially this point in the season, when older players start to trail off a little bit. I just haven't seen it. I think, it's been a couple games without a goal now, but scoring 2 against RSL, that was like the middle of August there, and he had another 2 against the Revolution in a shootout in the middle of July. I'm expecting him to really be able to play the full length of the season, and that was the question. The question was never talent. The question was going to be availability. When your DPs are all over the age of 30, how available are they? Availability has not been the issue this season.
Well, let's pivot into the matchup, right? In terms of availability, is this a game that you see someone like Choupo-Moting get rotated just because, like you said, the next 3 games are heavy hitters?
Nope. And part of the reason why is because the schedule is just allowing us for, a full week off in the mid. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I haven't really looked at the schedule, but I think we do have, normal match days. This isn't, where we have an Open Cup match in the middle or some other tournament going on. They really haven't.
There is the international break before decision day, which I just absolutely hate. But, that gives you 2 weeks before your decision day game as well, which is, bonus, I guess.
Of course, that complicates things, but I believe Red Bull's going to know before decision day if they're in or not. It's kind of out of our hands. Chicago Fire are 2 points up and they have a game in hand. So it's really up to what they do. If and when the time comes, they're going to be ready. But I haven't noticed rotation this year for rotation's own sake. Everyone on the team's caught a knock. It feels like everyone's missed a game or two, but I haven't really heard of. I haven't been surprised. I haven't opened up the the roster, the lineups, and been surprised by anything that's gone on this season. So I'm not concerned about that at all.
Now, you look at the way this team plays on the road. You look at the results they've gotten on the road, which have not been good. You look at how strong they are, in New Jersey. Where do you think this discrepancy lies? I get MLS. Everyone normally has a much better home record than away record, but is it a stylistic thing? Is it really just the reality of MLS? Where is that gap in points and results?
So if you look over the last 4 years, especially I believe it was 2 years ago, this is the team that was better on the road than at home, and it was the high press. Play at home, be conservative, take your shots. You have the fans at your side, play your ball. That's what they've been doing. But on the road, it was always just punch them in the nose, get the first goal, then lay it on thick. And that had worked so well for so long. Backing away from the press a little bit, I think that's got to be on Sandro Schwartz. He is a very European-style coach. He's okay winning at home and drawing on the road. When you're playing for draws in Major League Soccer, you know what happens better than I do. Montreal's done that for a long time. And they're getting 1-0 losses, 2-1 losses on the road in games that they should not be dropping. So I do think it's a little bit on the coach and a little bit on the mentality of the team. This needs to be a statement game where they come out, score early, and score often. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do it, but again, this is a big switch. It used to be the other way around where they were winning at home in bigger clips than on the road because they were forcing teams to make the mistake coming out aggressive when other teams were sitting back. Now it seems like those roles are a little bit reversed.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting game with the press because Marco Donadel has come in and implemented a very strict man-to-man kind of setup, which is, it's not unheard of, but it is somewhat unconventional in today's game where everyone's got zonal marking and it's just, it's so ambiguous and there's so many details. It's a very cut and dry press. And
I think of San Jose pulling that off, right? They did that for a couple of years there.
Exactly. And so it's something that took a while for the team to get used to, let alone, opposition. And the players have spoken a bit about how much of a almost culture shock because again, under Laurent Courtois, they played a 3-back. It was extremely zonal. It was still high. It was still a high line, but it was nobody had like specific player assignments, and it's a complete 180, which could promise to be a fairly open game if the Red Bulls, as we know them, like to kind of again punch you in the nose kind of football. Yeah. How much do you think they're going to answer the bell against a team like Montreal who already, wants to play an open game and wants to kind of open the field and have it go back and forth?
So I really like everything about what you said there. When I think of Matias Almeida when he was with those San Jose teams, and it was the same thing. It was like that Marcelo Bielsa, exactly. Zonal marking, man marking, stuff like that. But here's the problem with that. When you're man marking in Major League Soccer, you got to be better than the man you're marking. And when I look at the CF Montreal squad, I can't think of a position where I say I'd rather have that guy than the Red Bull. Not a single position. If you combined both rosters, gave them a preseason, you would get the Red Bulls roster out the back. And while San Jose had a lot of success, they won a lot of really games they should not have won playing that style. When it falls apart, the wheels come off. You're not losing 1-0 playing that style. You're losing 4-1 when that happens. So, I kind of like that a little bit more for the Red Bull. Again, you're going to come out and surprise a lot of people and win some games you have no business playing. Is it going to be this week? I'm not too sure. Are you going to zone mark Emil Forsberg? Are you going to man mark ECM? And that's, you guys are bad off of, now I can talk a little bit what I want to talk about before. You're bad off the corners. You're bad off set pieces. Yeah. That's where Red Bulls are going to take advantage. They're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who are 6'5" or taller in the box, jumping and getting their heads at the ball. And one thing Red Bull's been very good at home, not so much on the road, recycling corner kicks. You get a corner, you take a hit. If you take a shot, it gets deflected. Good. Line up, take another corner. Finally you put the ball in bounds, maybe whittle around a little bit, take the shot, let the deflection happen, take another corner, rinse and repeat. That is kind of what Red Bull's been really good at. And if you get a handball, if you get a spot kick, if you get a penalty, if you get, a foul just outside the box, well, now you have Emil Forsberg, the guy no one wants to see there, putting a ball on net almost every time. So, I think that's a way Red Bull's going to really look to capitalize on that play style. And that's, the clearest advantage I have. From open play, it's tough to really decide, because Red Bull are so bad on the road. But I'm just trying to think of a spot where we might have an advantage, and that's going to be, I think, where they're going to try to look to take advantage of CF Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, most teams when they come to Montreal, that's really what they target, what they look for. The more corners, the better, right? And I mean, you saw it in the Champions League between Liverpool and who was it? Atletico Madrid, where at the end of the game, I think Liverpool had 7 corners in a row, where it was just corner, take the corner, goes out for another corner, and then Van Dijk scored the winner. So it's a bit of ground and pound, but if it's effective, especially on the road.
Sure.
Where you're looking at this lineup, and we talked a bit about just from roster composition and also the advantages in form and quality that the Red Bulls have. Where on the pitch, be it a position, be it a specific area, be it a specific phase of play, that you think, okay, this is where Montreal has potential to hurt New York, and where are you a bit worried about a particular matchup maybe?
Player matchup, not necessarily, although like I said, if Sandro Schwartz went completely my way and started, all the young, really tall guys, that kind of leads yourself up to be, maybe counterattacked or caught off guard. Maybe Red Bull, when in possession, they like to pass back. They like to let the center backs handle the ball a lot. Noah Ayla is very good at that. Tim Parker is not very good at that. And I think at this stage in the career, if you're going to get a jump on a ball, it's going to be off of that. It's going to be a weird back pass to the goalie. Someone slips through and, all of a sudden you got a Wusu, one-on-one with Carlos Coronel. I don't like the opportunity for that to happen. And I know you guys got some guys who can really drop a ball into space. I always like Piet. I think he's just a solid, not great, but pretty good at everything he does. Something like that where they're pressing a little too high, maybe get caught pants, and all of a sudden, it works with 3 center backs. It doesn't work with 2 when you got 2 slower guys on the field who maybe can't track back in those situations. So if I'm worried about anything, it's the transition, getting caught in those, really quick moments where you think you have a couple extra seconds to pass the ball back to the goalie, and all of a sudden you're in a one-on-one in a situation you don't want to be.
Yeah, I think I don't know if Piet's going to play. He has been coming off of a variety of health issues, which has made life just a little bit difficult. He had put in 60 minutes against St. Louis, and it's clear that he's not fully up to speed yet. And plus, I think they're going to go back to they played 3/8 in the midfield, it was a flat 3. Usually they play with a double pivot, so I don't think they're going to play with a flat 3 again. I hope that they learned their lesson about playing a flat 3 at home, but Montreal has thrived in open games. That really is where you get the best out of this lineup. We get people that, they've got now. You have Ivan Jaime on the left-hand side. You have Hennady Sinchuk or Dante Sealy on the right. Those are players that specialize in isolated situations and one-on-one situations. So if they can get out in transition and, find those one-on-ones, they can, they might be able to hurt a little bit, because again, against a low block, against teams that kind of sit deep, they're getting a bit better, but they still don't have the patterns. They don't have they don't have an Emil Forsberg. They don't have a number 10 like that. Olher Escobar is awesome, and he's super, super exciting to watch, but he's still only 18 years old. This is his first full season in MLS, and it's only been half a season really. So he still needs some time to kind of get with the flow, but I think he'll be great in a couple of years. But right now, there's no one to really help you break down a low block. And if they come out with a four back and they say, okay, we're going to try and run with Montreal, I think, yeah, transition is probably Montreal's best bet at getting a result, because I don't think they're going to be able to dominate play or dominate the ball in a way that they want, at least. So I'm really interested to see how that matchup works, because Prince Owusu, um, if you isolate him, you get him out of the game, he's miserable, right? The second you let him
Yeah.
combine with people, he becomes incredibly difficult to pin down. But if you can get him just getting the ball back to goal and then setting it back to the midfielders, and you've kind of got him in a box. So I'm
Yeah.
really interested to see how the Red Bulls line up for that.
I was really impressed with Owusu when I saw him a few weeks ago. I can't put my finger on exactly what the game was, but it was like a typical breakaway situation. He had a man out right, and in mid stride he just kind of flicked the ball, over. It was like a lead, in the air forward pass, and I'm like, wow, I did not know that was in his repertoire. So not only
We
is he
didn't
kind of
either.
tricky there, but when a forward can bring that passing, can bring that ability, you have a really a recipe for success. But outside of that, I think that I agree with what you said. There's a huge talent gulf here. Montreal, it's no surprise they are where they are. That's what we projected. You're not spending on DPs. You're not really spending on anyone. Who do you get? Vrioni. You got a recycled reject from New England, and he hasn't even played this season.
He's
Like
played half a dozen games, maybe,
yeah,
right? So
yeah, it's been real
that's
rough.
not even a
And
designated player.
yeah, it's a big talent gulf there. So, I think that is where we are. It's like, does the talent breathe through, or is it a team playing at home, playing hot? Red Bull only have one win on the road all season, but Montreal has what, two home wins? So
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
what do they call it? Like unmovable spot, but unbreakable force, something like that. It's like, which one's going to give?
Yeah, I'm really interested, but that kind of segues nice into our last little bit here. Predictions. What's your score prediction for the immovable force and the unstoppable object, or whatever the words are?
Something like that. This is a physics class here we have. I, I'm the gambler. I have the MLS betting show, and for this one, I just couldn't make a play on it, just because my heart is too weighted on this one. I don't think I'm seeing with objective eyes, but I'd like to see a 3-1 win. I think Red Bull can go out there, make a statement, and say, hey, look, FC Cincinnati, you got to bring your A game to Sports Illustrated Stadium, the next week. I'm going to say 3-1 Red Bull.
I also think Rebels are going to win. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be much closer. I think it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. Honestly, Montreal sat back against St. Louis, against the worst team in the league. They sat back and they welcomed pressure and they lost 2-0. And I think they're going to have to rectify that. And I think they're really just going to go kind of gung ho. And I think we're going to get like a 3-2 game, or like a 4-3 kind of game, which I, for one, would love to see. The season's over. So, I mean, the best thing you could do is give your fans a nice show. And yeah, I think Red Bulls will come away with it, but I think it'll be like a 4-3 or a 3-2 kind of game with just chances on both ends.
Love it. Can't wait.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for talking soccer. I really appreciate it. Let the good people know where they can find you, what you got going on, and then all the awesome stuff you're doing.
All social media at Bob V Soccer. You can find us, The Designated Pundits. We're on all major podcast platforms. On YouTube, just search The Designated Pundits. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify now with video, you can find us there. And drop us a comment. You could always hit me up on Twitter. I post all my picks, not only in batch form, one at a time. We've been splitting our episode into little minis. So if you don't want to watch a full 45-minute preview podcast, but you want to know one or two of the different games, you can go and check those out too. So, thank you so much for having me. It was great working with you over the summer doing the Montreal season preview, and it's great seeing you again here today. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, of course. Yeah, hopefully, if we do that next year, it'll be a slightly more optimistic season preview. But again, that's up to them. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, thank you so much for stopping by.
If you
I
can't be
really
good, at
appreciate
least
it.
get weird, right?
Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. At least
Mix it up a
let's get
little.
weird with it, you know? Exactly. Yeah, again, thank you so much. We'll see how the game on Saturday goes, but may the best team win.